Hello, my name is Georgianne Ford with the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. And we have one of our attorney mediators returning back to us, Christine Lombardo-Zaun. And Christine, we've talked before about a lot about the parents and what they go through with divorce and mediation help, etc. But I love this new approach that you're taking on these videos, and I see that there's going to be probably maybe different parts to it. So you're going to talk about it from the child's perspective, what divorce, how it affects them.
Yeah, I don't know why this came to me or why it hasn't come to me sooner. It's like we guide our clients through mediation, we guide them to an agreement, and it's really adult to adult. And we certainly take into consideration the children, but we've never really talked to the children. And I just thought it's important that we hear from them. And so I was lucky enough to find some young adults who were willing to kind of sit down with me and be candid and open. And I just picked their brains. And so, yes, I initially thought this would just be one recording, one blog, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that the information that I collected, there's so much that I think breaking it up into bite-sized pieces will be, I think, more user-friendly for our clients and our potential clients. And anybody just really out there struggling, if they're going through this process or contemplating it. If I can help parents not make some of the mistakes that these parents made with the information I have, well, there's money right there, saving people a lot of money.
What I see happening here is we're all going to be like tuning into the next part, because this is valuable, and this is not something we've talked about before. So jump in, we're ready.
And just a caveat, I put one caveat at the bottom, but another one is, what I'm hoping is that if there are readers out there or listeners that have questions that aren't answered, to let me know, because my interviewees have been very open, and they've offered to support me in helping get the word out on what it's like to go through divorce through a child's eyes.
That's great.
So with this first one, I call it the initial shock. And so what I started with was, what did it feel like when your parents told you were getting divorced? So I'm going to read, if you don't mind, the excerpt, their answer, because it was almost verbatim. And so my question was, were you surprised when your parents told you they were getting divorced? And one of the young adults said, I had a feeling my parents were going to divorce a long time ago. I guess I did not believe or want to believe it or accept it back then, but deep down, I knew it. I know my parents think that they should have waited it out for their kids, but honestly, I don't think they should have stayed for the kids. Another young adult said, I think it almost made it worse as I had to watch my parents try to make it work when we all knew it wasn't going to. The fights only became worse, and the level of contempt and disdain for each other worsened, and I had to watch that.
So sad.
It was sad. And gosh, I got to tell you, as a parent, like that just hit home, because I think we get into our routines and we're doing, cooking, cleaning, going to work, coming home, doing the laundry, taking care of pets, whatever, that you forget to stop and check in and say, how are you doing? How are you feeling?
Right.
It's something that for me personally this year, it's something I'm working on, is to be more mindful of the people in my life and how they're feeling. So maybe this is how this all started. I'm not sure, but I'm really glad it did. Because I'll tell you, after asking this question to a number of these young adults, you could almost see like a little bit of relief coming across them. It was like, well, they were very appreciative that they were being heard.
How many people ask?
Right. I don't think they do. I don't think there's a lot. And I don't think it's that they're trying not to listen.
Right.
It's just you have so many other things on your mind, you forget.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you, if you're a parent going through this and you have children, you need to tune in because they're watching and they're listening every second, everything you're doing. So another question I asked was how, and so we did have a lengthy conversation about this, and they did share a little bit more. And the overall vibe with that first question was that they just, they kind of felt like parents were trying to hide that they were getting divorced.
Mhm.
And the kids were like, we kind of knew,
I bet you, and I bet you they're so much younger than they even think.
Now, yeah. And so the people that I interviewed are young adults. Okay. So I do have a big caveat here, which is, this advice that I might share with the next question is probably, for parents with young adults. I don't know if this advice will work for, elementary school age or, even adults, grown adults. I mean, it really depends. So, it's not a one size fits all type of advice.
Mhm.
So the second question I asked was, from your perspective as a young adult, how should parents tell their kids that they're getting divorced? And I've actually had parents ask this question recently, so I thought it was really timely. The one person said, well, do not tip one child off, even if the parents think they're old enough to handle it. So I guess in this one case, the parent told one child before they announced it.
Yeah, sure.
And this person was like, they felt uncomfortable. They didn't feel like it was, they felt like some things they don't need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And, the parent in me is sitting there thinking, okay, you are still a young adult. Kids will say one thing one day and another thing another day. And that's completely true. So this worked. This was this one person's opinion. Someone else said, I would suggest bringing the kids together and sitting down as a family, explain to them what is happening, and further explain that as parents, you have put a lot of thought into this. So kind of give the why without giving all the nitty gritty details. Mm-hmm. The why is we have put a lot of thought into this. It wasn't like a hasty decision that, we can't live together anymore and we're getting divorced. Parents don't have to give the gory details. And I will tell you from my interview, the kids don't want to hear them. Like, oh, your dad cheated or your mom cheated or, they lied to each other or, whatever accusations out there. The kids don't really want to hear it. What they want to see is a united front, that the parents love them and that, it wasn't an easy decision, but it was one that they made with thought and consideration. And they wanted to let the kids know. And I say kids, but I mean, the people I interviewed are young adults. One of them said, and I quoted it, talk with them, not to them. And I thought that was really powerful. Parents, and I'm guilty, right? We all talk to our kids. Mm-hmm. Do this, do that, get your homework done, eat your dinner, get showered up, clean your room, right? When it comes to serious conversations like this, the young adults unanimously felt like parents were talking to them and they didn't feel included in the conversation. They felt a big disconnect.
This is happening whether I want it to or not. I don't have to say.
Right. Whereas this is their family too. So that was really powerful. It was hard for them to talk about this. You could see the emotion on their faces. But they also saw the value in potentially helping other families get through difficult times. And so I did put my caveat in here that, this is anecdotal advice. This is coming from, interviews with young adults who do have firsthand knowledge of divorce. But what might work for these young adults might not work for other young adults. Everybody is different. So we just have to keep that in mind. So what I'm doing is, in addition to the blogs, I'm going to support the blogs with articles from like Psychology Today. I just shared one today, which is, I'm going to pull it up here. What was it called? The psychological effect divorce has on children. It was such a good read. So, this is like kind of before parents have decided, are they going down to mediation or are they going litigation? I will tell you, and this is from my personal firsthand knowledge, the children from mediated couples going through divorce bounce back faster and easier than children of litigation.
Why is that?
Well, because when you have parents who are literally fighting with each other, getting PFAs, which are protection from abuse orders, or dragging one parent into court or calling the cops on the other parent, it hurts the kids. Because inevitably one parent is hurting the other parent, and the children are a product of those two people. And so the parents who litigate, not only are they making a dangerous choice in some situations, it's also a very expensive one, because those divorces could easily be up in $70,000, $100,000. I've seen it. There was a divorce that should have, it was a 6-year marriage, should have been easy peasy, $71,000. The kids hurt, they remember, they feel it. And it's almost like a personal attack on them. So my next blog, the next part will each part's going to kind of tap onto the first one. So if you are listening to this, listen to the first one and then, go kind of in order, because there is a bit of a flow to it. But I'm really hoping that we can help people say, hey, let's do mediation for the sake, if not for ourselves, but for the sake of our children.
It would be a wonderful choice. Just here, you brought so much to this, and we're all going to look forward to these other videos, starting with myself, because there's always advice and there's always things we can learn from the kids and what they've experienced. So thanks so much for bringing this topic to us, and looking forward to your second part.
Sounds great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. If you would like to talk to Christine or want to know more about the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, it's 1-800-310-9085. Thanks again, Christine.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Georgianne Ford with the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation. And I'm here back with part 2 of her series, Christine Lombardo-Zaun, our attorney-mediator, started. And we're anxious to hear the whole story. Christine is about the approach and through a child's eyes from the beginning of finding out their parents are getting divorced, and she's going to take us through the different parts. And she did interviews and has some great information to share with us. So Christine, thanks for coming back. I think
Thank
today, part 2 is about after they found out their parents are being divorced, what happened next, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I haven't heard anyone ever ask that question. And it's like, I was a child who my parents were married until my mother passed. So I did not have to experience divorce as a child. So I don't know what that feels like. So that was another reason why I wanted to reach out and interview these, I call them kids, but they are young adults. Why I wanted to tap into them, because it's like, I don't know what it feels like, and I don't want to try to pretend to know what it feels like, but I need to know so that I can help others, not hurt any more children or not hurt themselves more than they have to.
I love that you bring that into your work, Christine, because you're always working with the adults, and that everything you learn and can share with us only makes us get a little bit better at this.
Yes. Well, anyone that knows me, I'm all about continuous improvement. So I'm always like, hey, we can do better.
And we should can on this topic.
In every aspect of our lives. So, I hear parents telling me how their kids are feeling and what they're going through, because I always ask, I always check in, but it's like, they're probably giving me their version of how their kids are feeling,
Mm-hmm.
And so I tapped into this young adult group, and they've been so gracious and candid with me. And it has just turned into something, I think, therapeutic for them, but even for me as a mediator, because it's giving me a whole different lens with which to look through. So,
and you're sharing that with us, and we thank you.
Yes. So what happened next? So in the first blog, part 1, we talked about, what happened when your parents told you were getting divorced, and how did that make you feel? And then I also asked them, the young adults, what advice would you give to these parents who have to tell their kids they're getting divorced? And so caveat number 1 is every case is different, and keep in mind that this information is being disseminated from young adults. So they're going through a certain stage in life. This might not work for 4th and 5th graders, right? Or middle school aged children. So we just kind of have to keep that in mind. And I don't even know if I could interview kids that young. I don't think that would be appropriate. But what I'm going to do is share some research articles that I find, and I'll share that on my LinkedIn page. One most recently was the psychological effect of divorce on children. Mm-hmm. And so it addresses some of the age differences. But so for this, I asked, what happened next? The parents dropped the bomb, kids were getting divorced. Okay, great. Pass the mashed potatoes. Like what, now what? So I asked that question, and one of the young adults said that they were in college when it happened. And so they actually were trying to think about how to be a good student, how to live away from their parents, how to develop time management skills, and just to get on a schedule as a college student. So they weren't really thinking about it. So they said it wasn't bad because they didn't have to live in that environment. But when they went home for break, that's when things changed, because one parent wasn't there. And it was a bit of a shock for them. Another young adult, also in college, said that they were very involved. So they liked being super busy because it kept their mind off of the divorce. And then I also talked to a young adult who was living in the home with the one parent, and they had a very different outlook. It was hard for them because, they saw one parent move out and they were living with the other parent, yet they were angry with both parents. But, the way this young adult phrased it was like, well, I can't pick on the person I'm living with because I'm dependent on them financially, and I don't want to have a fight with them, but yet I'm angry with them. And unfortunately, their divorce, that child's divorce, their parents, they were not mediation friendly. So you could see the pain in this child's eyes, basically.
So mediation friendly, can you just describe that? I'm not sure we all understand what that.
Yeah. So, when a couple decides to divorce, they have to decide, are they going to litigate or mediate? And litigation is where you hire 2 separate attorneys and you go to court and you pay a lot of money and you duke it out. Mm-hmm. even with the most reasonably priced attorneys. If you have two people that want to cut each other's eyes out and punish each other, it's going to cost a lot of money. Mediation is where you have a third party neutral like myself, who is trained in the law, but doesn't take sides. And we come to the table with an understanding that we don't want to duke it out in court. We want to sit like reasonable adults and work everything out, and then hopefully have some money left over to pay for the kids.
So that's mediation friendly, being open to mediation.
Being open and committed to it, and I have other blogs out there and recordings that talk about mediation and talk about, the cost of litigation. People think like, okay, I'll get a lawyer and I'll go litigate. The problem is that you might start with a small retainer, but if there's one bad turn in a divorce, let's say somebody gives you a really crappy appraisal on the house, that lowers the value to an unacceptable level. I mean, that could literally blow up the friendly, amicable divorce. Mm-hmm. Or if one spouse sees that the other spouse started dating, they could be like, all bets are off. So I've seen it over and over again. With mediation, you kind of lay everything on the table. You know what you're going to get. Litigation, it's like you might as well put a blindfold on because you don't know which way it's going to go.
So the parents are more able to emotionally be present for the children. I'm hearing that's what
with mediation.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage, a lot of maturity. It's still hard. Right? Sure. Divorce is hard, mm-hmm. and that's not going to change. The emotional traumas are still there with a lot of my mediation clients, but they're learning how to be aware of it and how to control it for the sake of their kids. So I had then asked the kids how did they feel after the initial shock of being told their parents were being divorced? How did that feel to them? And one of them said, I was so sad that I no longer had a family. And this young adult felt like their family no longer existed. They said everything was different. Sleeping in a new location felt strange to me. I felt very disconnected. I felt like I could not relate to my parents who were now starting their new lives. And I was not sure where I felt in, and I felt like I had no control. That was really, these comments that these young adults made were really, I don't know, for me, they were powerful.
So powerful.
Because, there's a lot of literature out there that, with young adults, especially that feel out of control, sometimes they resort to some really self-destructive habits or coping mechanisms that could be fatal. Like some become anorexic, some become bulimic, some cut. Or they might start smoking or drinking or doing drugs. I mean,
just the out of control, those feelings of out of control, and where do you put them, even as adults? So we had them as children, and then we have them as adults.
So think about being a young adult for a moment, mm-hmm. and not having control, feeling disconnected from the two people that you depend on. And you feel like you can't even communicate with them, but yet you rely on them financially in some way, shape, or form. Like it's a really messy situation. And, as a mediator, as a lawyer, as a parent, I feel like, hey, these kids didn't ask for this divorce. They didn't sign up for that. And it's the parent's responsibility. So some parents don't like when I say that, but it's like, you guys are the adults. You're the big kids. And you have to put your big kids on and make decisions that aren't always in your best interest, but are in their best interest. because you brought them into this world and they didn't ask for this form of punishment.
Sometimes we need to hear that from an expert, even though we know it. But just having that reminder, I'm sure you give your clients, is helpful. It just kind of refocuses us.
Well, and I think we talked about this in the first video, parents are busy and, it's not like we try to ignore our kids, but, when you're going 500 miles an hour and you're trying to make dinner and finish up a meeting, or, you're taking care of pets, you're taking care of household chores, it is very easy to just fall into a routine. But here are these young adults who aren't saying anything because they're afraid to, but yet they need to be heard. They need an outlet, a healthy outlet. Mm-hmm. So literally stopping and maybe taking them for coffee or taking them for ice cream and saying, just the two of them, and saying, I know this is difficult for you. How are you doing? Mm-hmm. And then just let them talk.
Good advice.
So then I asked, what were some of your coping techniques with some of these painful feelings? So one young adult used their roommate, their roommates or their friends to talk to. They said they let them rant. I think that's the word that they use at that age. Someone else said they felt they needed to cry on their own, whereas others were more expressive and cried to their friends. Mm-hmm. This one young adult was like, no, I needed to cry on my own. Someone said they listened to a lot of music. And I was like, oh, well, what kind of music did you listen to? And they said, I did listen to sad music. I listened to sad music. I listened to happy music. I just let the music take me wherever I was going that day. And I liked that because I feel that a lot of kids, they keep so much bottled up, and it's like, it's healthy to express it, and get it out. Someone said they colored, like the mandalas, or just playing coloring books or just doodling. They just sat quietly and colored, and they said that was really soothing. Someone said, because I had asked if any of them had gone to a therapist. There's a lot of great local psychologists, that are there helping people. We have COVID on top of all this. And, some of them said, yes, I had a therapist and it was helpful. But some of the other young adults were like, no, I wasn't ready to go to a therapist. And my parents kept saying, you have to go to a therapist. So one of the pearls that I gathered from that was, if you're a parent and you think therapy is the right answer, maybe wait, and this is for young adults, remember, but maybe give them some space to kind of let them come to you and tell you when they're ready to go to talk to someone. Because a therapist might not work for everybody. Some young adults might literally resonate with just music and they can work themselves through it. Others need some outside help, like friends or a licensed, therapist. Whatever it is, I think you got to let the kids figure that out on their own time frame. So
your guidance would be just try to give them a little space to make that.
Give them space. One of the young adults did say, though, don't be alone. Like, don't go and hide out and just be alone. That's not healthy. And I thought that was kind of mature for a young adult to say, because they realized that being alone wasn't going to help the situation. Maybe if you're coloring and whatnot, but this was like, kind of like, don't isolate yourself from the world. So, I took that, I thought about that, and then I was like, okay, so what are some other ways that we, can get help? And they came up with like talking to a priest or minister, talking to their friends at a youth group or another social club, talking to a relative, or even just playing outside with friends. So maybe like younger kids, that might be a good alternative. Let them go play, set up play dates, let them run around the park a couple times and wear themselves out and, just feel some kind of normalcy. But also ask them, like if it's a young adult, ask them what they want. Ask them what would help them.
Great question.
I think a lot of parents, they're trying to compensate for the shock of telling them they're divorced. But you know what? Kids are pretty resilient, pretty smart. And I think with a young adult who's trying to like really forge their way into adulthood and be independent, I think it's really important to tap into them and ask them what they want.
And I'm just thinking that would be, I know that the support groups for teen support groups for divorce, I know they exist. I think we're working on one through the Alpha Center.
Absolutely. Yep. The Alpha Resource Center. And they're doing a great job with that. I mean, they're offering all kinds of support at different levels. If you're not ready for the group setting, there's resources online that people can just look up and read.
Which is great for kids. I mean, it's we've got to make sure they're also going through their own transition and we're taking care of them.
Yes. So as I said, I will support this with some, very relevant articles so that we can kind of really dive deep into this and hopefully just help people. And what I would say is if anybody's watching this or reading the blogs and you have a particular question that you want me to ask my interviewees, I can certainly reach out and do that and, keep this discussion going.
That's wonderful. So to contact Christine, it would be calling the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, 1-800-310-9085. You can talk to anyone if you have questions or you want to give her a question to ask her interviewees. She'd be happy to accept that. So please reach out. Christine, so that's part 2. There is a part 3 coming?
Probably this summer.
Oh, awesome. Well, this is helpful. Anything we can do to make this better, to improve, like you said, and help our children transition through the effects of a divorce. So
absolutely.
Thanks again. And we look forward to part 3.
Thank you.
Bye now.